for that.
Mr. Manye, how do we make sure that this is not just another charter? We've had many charters in this country, and the likes of Mr. Andile Mqitama are sticking on to the Freedom Charter. Yeah. You know, the people are still saying, what about the Constitution? And he says, let's go back to the Freedom Charter. How do we make sure this does not become another charter?
This one, the nice thing about this one, it's a charter with the teeth, because the charter that has got a mining license. It's a charter that has got an exploration license. If you don't comply, you lose your license within 12 months. So this is got serious teeth. This is why they are up in arms, because they know that we're not playing games here. This is why we're saying this minister is driving the transformation as we want it to be. We voted for this transformation, and we're not going to settle for anything less. And we want to say to communities out there, it's now or never. If anybody is going to try and push back on this 30%, this is the time to halt the economy of this country. This is the time that all professionals must come to the streets and join the people, because this is the only time that for the first time the communities are given a decent stake in these entities that keep ripping them off in their communities. So today, as professionals, we will stand with our communities. Nothing that is in that charter that they're going to lose. If anything, that charter must be revised upwards. Any step that is going to take it backwards, we're in the streets and we're going to halt the economy of this country up until real transformation happens. It cannot be that every time we get economic terrorism, we get told this is going to happen, and all of this. And by the way, when that is not happening, our people are not benefiting. We cannot be willing people that are going to be taken into the guillotines. Some of our leaders, by the way, they collaborate with this white monopoly capital, and want to send them a very strong warning that when we voted them into power, we didn't vote them to give them license to take us into the guillotines. They must come and consult us. We have not given any mandate as a people on the ground to anything less than what the minister is doing. What the minister is saying is in line with the BE code, which has been signed off, as it were. Anything less than that is not a mandate of the people, and we're not going to accept it.
Before we run out of time, Commissar Mqitama, is this not divine intervention that this is happening 1 week before the ANC's policy conference? Maybe this is a wake-up call to say to the leaders of the ruling party, define policy in a way in which this leadership will be remembered years from now. Is it not divine intervention?
The ANC needs to rescue itself. And in fact, you're right if you call this a divine intervention. It's a timely intervention precisely to do that. If the policy conference of the ANC does not come out on these three questions, land expropriation without compensation, accept the mining charter as it is, and radical economic transformation, the ANC is done. It's finished. This is the saving grace. But of course, I do not support the Freedom Charter. I'm from Black Consciousness, but I do support the Mining Charter. This charter does unite all of us who want liberation. And what we need to be doing, really, is to defend the charter. And the first enemy that we need to deal with is this chamber. And I hope that ourselves, the communities and the trade unions can speak with one voice. In fact, BLF, our movement, is writing a letter to the Mining Charter saying to them, within 5 days, they must withdraw any activities and any further threats against this Mining Charter. If they don't, we are going to have 24-hour action on their headquarters until they listen to what the people want. So we are calling out for the trade unions, for the communities, for our people out there. All of us, let's unite and defend the charter, this particular Mining Charter.
I think a discussion that we must take, because it's very much important. We must also go there. Who do they represent?
Exactly.
Do they have monopoly of setting policy in the mining industry?
Exactly.
Do they represent everybody who's in the mining industry? Because where I'm sitting there, junior black miners who are unable to get into the chamber, so where I'm sitting. So you probably are speaking about a chamber that was formed some 100 years ago. And again, there are black people who are sitting, because black people who are sitting should be uniting behind this charter. And people who are sitting in that mining chamber, some of them are direct beneficiaries of the constitution of this country, of the MPRDA when it was enacted in 2002. And now they've benefited, some of them are sitting on the charter. Hypocritically, they then turn and say, no, to the reviewing of the charter.
Those are house negroes.
Yes,
we call them house negroes.
Go there and probably ask those questions.
But I think it's also important for the Department of Mineral Resources to be strengthening capacity for monitoring, so as to the penalties within the Act are implemented. Because if you look at the historical MPRDA, for non-compliance, only 3 companies with mines licenses have been suspended. We want radical implementation of these policies. We want strengthening of the Department of Mineral Resources inspectorates to look at SLPs, to monitor implementation of this charter. Non-compliance should not be tolerated. Even going back to the 2014 targets, where about 400 and so companies were found to be non-compliant. We want to start with those that are non-compliant, even from there, so that government can show that it's not only barking, it's biting.
Mr. Manyi, it's something that Tabo's touched on, and that was the issues, with regards to transformation or the lack of transformation within the mining sector. What are some of the biting issues that needs to be addressed with regards to transformation in the sector?
Look, I think the first thing is the ownership thing. It's an important issue, and that's why I support the minister on this thing. And the minister, I mean, if you look at that, if you look at the charter itself, it's got all the right things. At board level, the charter says 50% should be black people, as it were. So we support that. And not only black people, there's a percentage for women, things like 25% must be women.
Yes.
At board level. At senior management level, the same number, 50% must be black people and all that. On procurement, it says 70% of the spend must go towards BE entities. Who could ever stand in the way of this? And then a very important thing, all the BE companies, their biggest problem is liquidity. This charter is the first ever charter to say a thing like this, to say 1% of the turnover must be given to the BE guys every year, kind of thing. That is a very important thing. All BE people, they sit there with paper money, no cash. This charter is going to give them cash, as it were. It's a very progressive policy. And also, as you've heard, with the community stake, the communities are going to have a stake in this thing. The employees, the people that are actually getting these minerals out, are also going to get a stake in this. This is actually a decolonization project, as it were. The minerals are being taken to the people. This is what even the Freedom Charter said, that we shall all benefit. And the Minister Zwane is doing his best to do that. So we, as Progressive Professional Forum, are saying anybody that is standing on the way of this charter is standing in the way of transformation, is actually spitting on the grave of President Mandela, President Oliver Tambo, all the people that wanted transformation. This is quite a serious matter, and we're saying it's a matter of life and death. There should be no turning back on this matter. Professionals, they must forfeit their days at work and so on. And if there's any pushback on this charter, we should be out there in our numbers on the streets to show our discontent, to show our support for this charter. Indeed, we had wanted 50%, but even with a 30%, we've said it's a step in the right direction, and therefore we are not going to accept anything less than this. This is a step in the right direction. It decolonizes, it brings back ownership to the people that deserve it.
Mr. Nkutama, a step in the right direction, says Mr. Manyi. Let's just address some of those voices who are against the implementation of the new charter. Is this maybe them being afraid of losing control of the mining sector? What do you think it is?
Yes, firstly, we should have expected a resistance and a backlash, particularly from those that represent the interests of the mining industry. Because, I mean, it's a monopoly. White people have stolen our land, our wealth, enslaved us. Remember, this wealth that is in their hands come from, the genocides of colonialism, the super exploitation of our people that continues in the mines. In fact, the post-94 state has not transformed itself to understand this better. That is why we had a tragedy such as Marikana. In fact, if we think carefully, this mining charter is a tribute to those who died for us to have liberation, including the children of 76. Because for the first time, we have the real possibility as black people in this country to have a share in the economy and in the mining sector, which is so important. These black voices, the white people, I accept a priori that they will oppose the charter because they have our stolen wealth. And they have managed to bribe a few black people such as the spokesperson of the mining chamber, because the Chamber of Mining, because they benefit from the exclusion of the black majority. We call them, in our language, the house Negroes, the sellouts, impi. These are the black people that oppose this charter. And we see the same impis inside the ANC, which is actually the saddest thing, really, that the ruling party has leaders who oppose transformation. That leave us with what? With us and the workers and the communities. I want to suggest that what we need to do immediately is a process, a national process together, which is to take the mining charter to the people. Let us go and educate our people about the provision of this charter so that our people can then be able to defend it and to make it easier to understand how they're going to benefit. Because any radical economic transformation which does not benefit the poor first, it becomes an elite project, it is useless, we reject it. This, what Minister Msebenzi Zwane has done, is to give us, for the first time, the possibility of the poor to benefit directly, the workers to benefit directly. Therefore, this is something that we must defend. We are concerned. The mining chamber is very powerful. The media, white-owned, opposition parties, both, including the economic freedom fighters and the DA, they are against transformation. They just sometimes speak about it. Now, also the ruling party seem to be divided. We need to support the president because he has provided clarity on why at all these levels, whether it's procurement, whether it's ownership, black people must benefit. And we see the first minister, in our view, which has interpreted the president correctly when he speaks about radical economic transformation, is Msebenzi Zwane. The backlash is huge. The attack is great on Minister Zwane. It is up to the poor, it's up to workers, up to the communities and radical organizations such as ourselves to defend this mining charter and to defend Msebenzi Zwane.
I mean, beneficiation, 100% of beneficiation must be done locally. Who would want to
hijack that?
Yeah.
I'm concerned of this point. You know, this new charter says 1% of the turnover will be given to the community investment, you know, projects to build schools, roads in those communities. How can anyone want to overlook such a charter?
Exactly. Look, where we're sitting, maybe starting from where Andile was, to say, in fact, the department must look into translating, simplifying this this chart, translating it into 11 languages so that all stakeholders take it down there. Look, the issue that is there, the issue of the 1%, it is a submission that we have made because we have been saying you are making 100 million. But you are building a simple crash, you are donating 100,000, you are distributing blankets. Therefore, we have said, let there be a barometer. Let government put a stance and say how many percentage. And we have said, we suggest 1%. But the charter again, moves further. Remember when you complained, communities when you protest, we said we do not get skills from these mines. And they are telling us that there is no budget that is set aside for communities. But the charter interestingly comes and says, in the MTDA, the Mining Development Agency, there is going to be 2% that will be going towards the training. Remember, you've had a mine for 10 years, and that mine leaves the area. The people in the area do not have skills, but this charter addresses exactly that. The last issue I want to address, there's an issue of 100% mineral samples done in the country. Is that not an achievement? Why do you oppose that? Okay, the question that we must be asking, why is it that after 23 years of democracy, do you still have foreign companies who are doing samples, mineral samples, when you have unemployed graduates who can actually be recruited by local companies? When you have local graduates who can actually form companies, because this charter opens up the other areas. It says young people who are graduates can group themselves into a cooperative that is going to be a company that is going to be doing mining samples. That's what the charter is doing. Therefore, where I am sitting, we see meaningful beneficiation that is going to come out of this. We're saying our roads. We stand and we want to blame government for the roads. Who damages these roads? It is these trucks. So if you have that 1% going there, you can then channel that towards infrastructure projects, because they stand and say, no, infrastructure is the government's work, it's not our work. But they are actually who are degrading the roads.
I think you must give this man a job as an analyst. He's doing really well.
Be careful, Spiso, be careful.
I think the responsibility here, Abigail, is that these organizations come into South Africa. They exploit billions and billions from our soil. They give a percentage, like he said, of crashes or other small projects that don't even constitute to a percentage of
the money.
their milkings, and South Africans don't see the reserve. I think this is one way that South Africans can take part in their economy, one for a first time since democracy.
Yeah, but also, if you look at one of the things that baffles us in terms of human resource development for employees and communities, the chamber comes out and says it is paying 120 billion rand annually. And if you look at 5% of that, that could amount to about 6 billion or so. And if you look at if that amount of money was put in towards skilling and upskilling employees, we should not have these challenges whereby when retrenchments come, employees cannot be able to cross-transfer in other sectors of the economy. Now, someone is not telling us the truth here because they claim to have complied, but the realities on the ground are different issues. But also, secondly, the fear of the charter might lead to job losses is quite concerning, because from where we are sitting, in the past 3 years, we've lost close to 100,000 jobs, and there was no charter in place. And there is a consistent executive unwillingness, not only to transform, but to ensure that employees are upskilled in various operations. There's what I call a disjuncture between Kuruman and Sentin. Kuruman, where the operation is placed, and Sentin, where the so-called transformed industry execs are sitting.
Commissar Mqitama, I see you nodding vigorously in agreement to this gentleman. I don't know because he's wearing red or what you're in acknowledgement of.
I think we are in agreement with the labor movement and also the community structures, and of course, Comrade Mani. We have reached a point in this country where we have to move this direction or surrender completely any notion of freedom. It is a crossroads. We can either do this the right way, and the right way is this mining charter way. There is no other way. And we must accept that there's going to be a massive blockage and a backlash against it, because white monopoly capital has had it too nice in this country for too long. It has not been challenged. And we see that the mining charter for the first time provides a serious challenge, and it says to the chamber and others, black people must also matter. Now, what we must do, I think, as a matter of agency, is to send a very clear message to the Chamber of Mines that actually the wealth that you have had up to now is stolen wealth. It is wealth that comes from oppression and exploitation. Black people in this country want their wealth back. And we will not accept any more threats from them. Because you see, they want to run this economic terrorism. They are speaking in this way, affect the rand, and then they say, oh, see, the markets are reacting to this charter. But when they are the ones who have triggered this process, and then they tell us about shares are going to drop, we also agree that let the shares drop. The gold and the diamonds belong to us. These are not affected by this because the world wants this, and as soon as they are in our hands and we have organized ourselves, we should be able to have the wealth. We must not, as a people, to be deterred, to be intimidated, because they want to intimidate us about jobs are going to be lost. I mean, just like the trade union comrade are saying, jobs are being lost already, and there was no charter. Now, if jobs are lost because there's transformation, good, because we black people will take care of one another. And when our communities benefit and workers benefit, the talk of unemployment will become something of the past.
It's now or never. You must remember, all this time, we've been a very collaborative citizenry in this country. We've been holding back and letting the markets dictate and collaborating and doing everything according to the book. What did we get out of that? What we got out of that is that black people own only 3% of the JSE. What we got out of that is that black people in this country, in terms of even the latest report, occupy less than 14% of the top positions. We've got poverty that is sprawling. We've got a huge unemployment, particularly among the youth. We've got a very funny phenomenon, something called unemployed graduates. This is what we've been doing out of collaborating. And this is when we were not on junk status. And this is what we got. That was our prize for collaborating. Where are we now? after collaborating. Now where we are, we've got junk status, we've got a recession, we've got continue to have unemployment. What have we got to lose? Absolutely nothing. It's now or never. We collaborated with the system. The system did not give us any thank you. So now we must say now or never, and we are going in now, and we are saying when this economy rises, it must rise with the black people being serious owners so that we have the upside. As it were, in fact, a blessing in disguise, because now we can pick up equity for next to nothing, and then we can have the upside. So it's time that black people must say, we are not going to move back. Anybody that is going to stand in front of us must be crushed. We are not going to tolerate any proxy of white monopoly capital. It doesn't matter what colors you are wearing. As long as you are a proxy of a white monopoly capital, you must be crushed, because you are actually benefiting your own stomach at the expense of masses of our people.
Lives. In closing remarks, we've got 2 minutes to go.
In fact, what is important is also the PIC needs to come on board in order to direct those companies in that chamber of mines. As an institutional investor, the IDCs needs to come in place. That's an important aspect, because we see Sibanye Gold, for example, is taking 2.6 billion to the United States, while Donald Trump only wants jobs in America. They are not investing in cook mines. They've just expelled 2,000 employees yesterday, of which NUM has 1,100 of those employees. So we need a government to push those institutions to make sure that they speak our language, and our language is jobs in South Africa, growth in South Africa, and economic transformation for all.
Tabu, your closing comments.
Look, we must brace ourselves for an era where, because we are living in an area where everything is over-sensationalized. An era where everything that happens, a job that is lost, is going to be blamed on the mining charter. We must brace ourselves for that. And you see, why does the chamber behaves like a homogeneous bunch of mining companies? Because not all, remember, the charter also rewards those who have been over 30%. But why are we not saying that? Let's then begin to quantify, so that we then begin to see that 10% of them have actually been compliant. Therefore, why are we not going and looking into these things? Therefore, we're saying we must begin to brace ourselves, but we're here. We're saying this charter is going to benefit communities. This charter addresses and represents our views that we put forward when we were consulted, and we want to see it being implemented.
Andile, closing remarks.
Let's defend the mining charter. Let's defend the Minister Msebenzi Zwane, and let us also speak very vigorously to the ANC, the faction which is anti-transformation, the faction led by Ramaphosa, by Enoch Godongwana, by people like Derek Hanekom, that faction that wants things to stay as they are. It needs to be communicated very clearly that this is not the time. Now we want to go with radical economic transformation, and the voice of the President and of Minister Zwane must be protected, because black people are tired of being spectators in their country. The ANC has run this country for 23 years. It did not run it in our interest. Now is the time. And if they don't do so, we can see the other faction and white people are literally going to take over this country. Will not just not have the economy, even political power will go into white hands. We don't want that. But we are excited about this charter, but also concerned that its enemies are powerful, and its enemies are going to try to erode these minimums which have been put forward. That is why ourselves, trade unions and Comrade Thabo here, we must go out, in fact, in the street, educate our people, and defend this mining charter.
Mr. Manyu, closing remarks from you.
It's now or never. White monopoly capital is regrouping. Let's be aware of that. White monopoly capital is actually getting more arrogant by the day. And I think the new strategy now is to use our leaders. It's no longer clear now who's representing us. It cannot be that when a leader speaks, you're not so sure as to exactly whose interest is he representing. So we as professionals are analyzing the leaders, we're analyzing how they speak, we're analyzing the interest that they represent, we're analyzing everything that they do, and we're saying we are not, as a professional strata, we are not going to allow a situation where our vote is going to be used to legitimize us being taken into the guillotines, all in the name of trying to be sophisticated and flowery language about the markets and jobs. We understand that language, and we're saying the facade must come down, the facade must be removed. We want radical economic transformation. Our communities must benefit. Black people must be prioritized. There must be no apology on this matter.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time this evening. Sfiso, you had that in-depth discussion with the minister. When do we get to see that?
Yes, I did. It is on tomorrow at channel 405 on DSTV, only on ANN7. It's really in-depth, and South Africa should look. A luta continua.
Well, we look forward to seeing that. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. I want to thank all of our guests, Mr. Lutando Brokwe, NUM Head of Transformation, Thabo Mutle, the Regional Secretary of Sanko, as well as my co-anchor for this evening, Mr. Sfiso Matlangu.
Dreams do come true.
They do indeed. Lucky you. Our resident political analyst here at ANN7, as well as Mr. Andile Mqetama, National Convener of Black First, Land First, Mr. Tshepo Khadima, political analyst, he left us a short while ago, as well as Mr. Mzwanele Mani, the president of PBF. Thank you very much, gentlemen,
It's
for
a good night
joining
from
us.
us.
It is a good night. ANN7 Prime.